Okay, welcome to Walking with JK Boots with the Brandon of Anchor Point podcast. It's a pleasure. Thank you, seriously, for making the trip. Dude, appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually pretty stoked to actually see the magic behind the walls.
Yes,
it's cool.
It is magical. And quick history. So the first podcast we ever did with you was actually over the phone. The second one we ever did with you was also over the phone.
It was.
And then the third one, the final third big badass boot episode was
That's
in
literally
person.
what it was titled.
Literally what it was titled. And that was at our writing store. And so it was, I think, I don't know, were we like the third or fourth or fifth episode you ever did or something like that?
I think you were, I'd have to look for, I think you're the fourth episode.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So that was really cool
to
be a part of that history there. And so that's our history with you. And, I remember when we did the first one, people knew about us, but not really. And that was a big boost for us. The second one was a big boost. So thank you. We owe you a lot. Appreciate it a lot.
Dude. You don't owe me a dang thing, man.
No, it's just cool. It's cool. And it's fire culture. So it is pretty cool. But let's make it about you. So, I think our listeners know Anchor Point, especially the fire guys. But for those that don't, dude, just walk us through your fire history. How'd you even get started? I actually don't even know if you were Forest Service first or not.
I was actually Bureau of Land Management first.
Okay.
So I was on DOI side, Department of the Interior side of the house.
When was that? What year was that? So what kind of crew?
I started in 2009, and then I tried to get on as an AD, which is an administratively determined firefighter. Now it's like an emergency. You're not like a full-time firefighter. You're just like, it's basically like the farm league, the minor leagues. Like, hey, try this out. If there's a fire, we'll call you. Be in shape, be ready. Let's go. I tried to do that in my rookie season with Silver State Hotshots, and I got my ass kicked like a wad of cookie dough because I was like 20 years old. I had no idea, no frame of reference, never worked that hard in my life, even in sports. Like I did wrestling. I was a snowboarder. I was a swimmer. I could dominate that stuff. I was great at it. But when it comes to my small frame hiking, upwards of 60 pounds worth of crap up a hill and then working for ever, which seems like forever, 16-hour days as a hotshot. I just did not do well with that.
So physically it kicked your butt at
it was
beginning.
Arrogance. Wow. It was arrogance and ignorance, dude. I was just like 20 years old and just had no clue.
Interesting.
So didn't necessarily make it on the hotshot crew, but luckily I had some heart and drive and they recognized that. And thankfully the superintendent and the assistant superintendent bumped me over back down to the engines where I kind of developed and got some legs under me, so to speak, both physically and mentally. Right. And is actually one of the hardest lessons that I've ever had to learn. It's like those lessons of being a human and like what you're capable of and experiencing what is perceived as failure, like not achieving your goal, was one of the most magical things that has ever happened to me because it's propelled me into a fire career that was lasting for 11 years. Wow. And now I'm still connected to fire, both Anchor Point and my day job, BurnBot.
Yeah.
It's just like all interconnected. It was a really cool experience. I'm very thankful for that.
First failure you think projected you into your fire career?
Ironically, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And probably not a lot of people would open up a podcast with saying something like that, but
no, I think that's synonymous with a lot of the great stories you hear about people's, great successes and things like that. And I've experienced that. There's a lot of things that didn't work out when we first got going, but I think it's like grit. You just don't give up. Ultimately, if you just don't give up, you will get to where you want to go.
Oh, absolutely.
Ultimately, yeah.
And there's a whole thing. I think that even as society as a whole, right? I'm a huge proponent of failure, right? As long as you're failing forward. And I think that's kind of been removed from our society to some degree. And it kind of sucks. Like, how the hell are you supposed to figure out what you're good at unless you fail at stuff?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Fail. Trial and error, right?
Trial and error.
Just kind of go. So 2009, you did the DOI thing. And then what was your journey into the Forest Service?
So I started, all right, bringing it back to the original question instead of going down rabbit holes here. So I started in 2009 with the Department of the Interior, the Bureau of Land Management, right? And not a lot of people know what a wildland firefighter is, so I'm going to try and give you the quick and dirty of it. Wildland firefighter is a person that goes out into the woods and fights wildfires. But there's a lot more to it. There's different crews. There's hell attack. There's smoke jumpers. There's engine crews. There's hot shots. There's all this like wide world of firefighting. So when you see smoke in the air from these wildfires across the West, which you are very familiar with.
At this point, we are very familiar with that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because you see Twitter and everything like blowing up with smoke from New Jersey and New York and stuff. And they're like, oh my gosh.
What is that? Yeah.
Like, first time, huh?
Well, to be fair, maybe 7 years ago, we didn't really have as much of it, I feel like, as we do now. So I get it, because I feel like when that first started happening with us too, we were kind of like, this is weird, but at this point, I'd say for the last solid 5 years, 6 years, every summer for about 2 or 3 weeks, we're smoked out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And it's becoming more common. It's really hard. There's a lot of complexity behind that, and I don't have the data here. It's not like we have a person to pull up stuff.
Unfortunately, I need that third party for the.
I can browse out my laptop if you want.
Sure, yeah.
It's in your office, but anyways, it's I think there's more awareness rising to it, and I think that's due to the fact that people are being a little bit more vocal and kind of spreading that word and educating people about what wildfire is and what you're feeling the effects of it, right? You see smoke in the air, you see green and yellow and white hotshot buggies show up for 2 weeks or a month or however long a campaign fire lasts, and then smoke diminishes. There's still a little bit of, interior torching or burning, and then no one's to be found. So no one knows exactly what it's like on the line. And I think that's why through the course of my fire career of 11 years, I kind of developed into this like podcasting thing to tell the story of wildland fire, right? But it's not me telling the story.
It's your guests telling the story.
It's telling their perspective. But bringing it back, 2009 is when I started Department of the Interior, Bureau of Land Management, Carson City District, BLM. Wonderful time. Did that on engines and filled in on some various hand crews, which is like hotshot light. It's not like a hotshot crew, but it's still kind of the similar work. So you're digging fire line, removing fuel from the line from the fire. You're creating fire breaks by hand with hand tools. You're hiking up and down hills, all that stuff, right? Then come, 2015, I actually decided to finally pull my head out and go and explore and try and move up. And I took an apprenticeship spot with the Forest Service on the Rogue Siskiyou National Forest in Oregon.
So that full first 6 year period was just DOI, BLM stuff?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I didn't know that. Wow.
Cut my teeth there in a little station called Doyle, California. And
were you a seasonal or all year round?
Seasonal the entire time. I didn't get my first perm appointment until 2014 when I took that job with the apprenticeship in the Forest Service.
Where was that at?
So Rogue Siskiyou National Forest. I was based out of Powers initially. Did a little time in Gold Beach. Did a year on Redmond Hotshots. Filled in with Rogue River a little bit, and it was fun, man. It was a cool learning experience. In fact, I loved it so much that in 2017, after I completed my apprenticeship, went through the academy, advanced academy, all that stuff, I even went back to get some more punishment and become a cadre at Academy, Foundational Academy 2, I believe. So shout out to everybody who's out there who's
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So how many years total?
So 11 years total. So it feels like I'm aging in dog years. It's definitely put some city miles on my body, but
sure.
11 years total, man.
Can you talk about I know from just doing firefighter stuff and just business and stuff, customers and things, but, and even that, I don't even know everything, but can you talk about the progression from, like, let's say some guy starts out, what seems is entry level for a lot of firefighters is to work on an engine, even though that's not that it's not serious. It just seems like everyone kind of starts either like volunteering and they say like, oh, I worked on an engine, and then like they work up, and it's like, can you talk about the progression of like, what does a career usually look like if someone's going to be a wildland firefighter for like 20 years, what is that even like, what is it? And then there's the seasonal thing, permanent thing. What does the progression of a career even look like for wildland fire?
So, let's bring it back. I think things are changing, more importantly, and I think that's from the efforts of grassroots wildland firefighters. Yeah. It's an organization. They're a nonprofit that kind of advocates for the boots on the ground.
We love those guys. Yes,
it's awesome. They're doing some wonderful stuff. But for me, in my experience, I want to say that you start off as a seasonal or that farm league, the AD, administratively determined firefighter, right? And that's the non-call position. Or you move up to a seasonal position if you get lucky and get picked up by your first year, or you get converted from that AD into a full-time position. But it's still seasonal. So you're getting your 6 months of firefighting, right? It's 3910 or 1039. Apologies. It's called a 1039 position, and that is 1 hour short of half-time, like half a year of work. But in reality, the way that the laws are written, like labor laws, is that since it's 1 hour shy of that 1040 or 2080 is going to be full-time year-round work, right, at 40 hours a week. Well, now you're 1 hour shy of that 6 month thing, right, which qualifies you for insurance, benefits, retirement, all that stuff, right? It's a seasonal workforce. It's great for college It's great for a college job. If you want to make some decent money at
Quick
that time,
cash kind of.
yeah. I mean, it's feast or famine though.
Sure,
I won't lie.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really busy fire season, or it's really, really slow and you're just sitting there eating ramen.
Is it kind of like the feast part is like overtime and just you're running and gunning 21 days, whatever, how long a roll is or something? That's kind of like, so it's almost ironic. Like if the forest is on fire, it's good for the firefighter because they're busy and they're working and they're making money.
Yeah. I mean, let's reframe that though. It's good for the firefighter's bottom line. And I hate saying that, but in the reality of it is we're not CAL FIRE, we're feds, right? We don't make CAL FIRE wages.
Yeah.
We are an entry level firefighter previously to grassroots. They're probably making $13, $14 an hour to go risk their lives for 6 months out of the year.
Crazy.
Yeah. And that 1039 halftime seasonal position, that's not inclusive of your overtime. It's not like you run out of 1039 appointment hours. That's just your base wages over. So what you end up doing is you actually work more than a year sometimes a year and a half. You have 1,000 hours of overtime in a season, 1,300 hours of overtime in a fire season. Yeah, that's a year of work condensed into 5, 6, sometimes 4, sometimes 7 months.
So it can be really, really good if you hit a lot of overtime.
It can be really good, but we're not making CAL FIRE wages. We are. It kind of sucks too because we're having to chase these overtime assignments, right? These fire assignments, right? And hope you get up on the board and go out to an assignment, because if you don't, well, you're starving through the winter because you're unemployed during the winter. Period. It's not like anybody. I mean, you as a business owner, what if somebody came up to you, unless they're extremely talented, right? Just somebody you didn't know, kind of gruff, had his beard, kind of probably smells like BO because they've just been out in the forest, and said, "Hey, will you hire me for the next 4 months? Because I got to take 2 months off on either side to, 1, decompress from the fire season, and 2,
get back into shape
and all that stuff."
No, of course not. And no business, no company will, because you don't just hire people for a short period of time that have, the investment alone into just training somebody will take 4 months.
Yeah.
Before they can actually be in a position to provide value to it. So no, the answer is no.
And it's very, very rare, unless you have a skill that's already developed, like construction, or if you're just like a wicked boot maker already and you just want that seasonal job, then it's different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Joe Schmo, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to even find a job at, something relatively unskilled, like working at McDonald's,
where they just will take you for 4 months. Yeah. Yeah. No one really even does that, I don't think.
I don't even think McDonald's would do it.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, you can just lie, but that's not a good strategy either.
Some people have to do that, but it's a necessity, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to the whole thing is, the average entry level wage for a federal wildland firefighter previous to grassroots efforts, probably $13-14 an hour. So a good fire season is a busy one for us, our perspective. However, for the taxpayer, that's my money going there, right? And I'm a taxpayer just like you, just like our producer. And to say a good fire season is a busy one, the public's going to look at you a little bit different, and they're going to get probably a little bit pissed. And they're like, what do you mean? You're going to let this fire burn? They're going to make those assumptions. And it's like, no, you're out there getting your ass kicked.
And risking your life.
Doing it, right? We're not here for the all-American F-around hour. We're risking our lives to put this fire out. We're doing our best we can. And the reality is that you can only do so much. You're fighting Mother Nature. That's a very, very powerful force.
I agree.
You can only do so much. And I'm not going to risk my life unless it's very circumstantial, like a few circumstances, I would. However, if it's a couple of acres that I have to sacrifice for the safety of my guys and girls out there, I'm not going to go for it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody would disagree with you. I mean, that's very, so Burke was here. Burke from the foundation was here.
Oh, really?
A couple of weeks ago, and we filmed together. And I've known the foundation for a long time, and because you just touched on this thing with risking your life, well, Burke sees the other side of it, where someone not only risked their life, but they paid the ultimate price, which is their life.
I got a lot of friends on the wall.
There you go.
Walls.
Yeah,
I got a lot.
So, way different now. So as you mentioned, like as a taxpayer, so like as a taxpayer, you might have an opinion, and you should, because you're a taxpayer, you pay them, you pay your taxes, whatever.
Yeah.
But like on the other side of that too, it's seeing it, just listening to Burke share his perspective on how many people are on that wall, how often it happens, and what happens to a team or a crew when that happens. And it's like, it makes you kind of reevaluate. Okay, well, like I hate to say it because I mean, if it was my house or something, yeah, I'd be upset. But like, is that house worth it? Is that acreage worth it? You know, no.
It's a moral dilemma almost.
The short answer is no. There's a longer answer where you can come at it from different angles, but it's like really hard to justify. Like, okay, we're gonna risk putting 3 more guys on the wall or whatever. You know, whatever the situation is, 3 guys or gals for this material thing. And there are things that can't be replaced that might burn down in a fire. But what's the ultimate price? What's the price that all men pay? It's death. It's their life. You know, it's like,
and we all pay that debt eventually.
Exactly. And you try to pay it as late as possible, right? Yep. So, and you try to pay it in the most fulfilling way as possible. And so, what is the average age of a wildland firefighter? Mid-20s, early 30s, late 30s?
I'd say about probably 21 to, well, depending on how far along you are. I mean, operationally, I've seen 60-year-old people out there on the line cutting line.
Wow, that's amazing. I never even
some of the hardest individuals that I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, then I take it back. Then whatever, still young, relatively young.
It's right? a young man and woman sport, 100%.
Younger people.
Yes.
And then to now think that, okay, well, no one should be paying that price at 36 years old or 27 years old or whatever. You know what I mean? So
absolutely not.
Anyways, that's just the perspective. And I share that perspective because I'm not a firefighter, but I've just been talking to you. I've talked to Burke, our customer base, and then I'm just a guy, taxpayer guy. It's like before I heard all of this stuff, you would see it one way and you kind of say, hey, like, what the hell? Go save that forest or whatever. You know what I mean?
Well, it's easy to make assumptions with something that you have no frame of reference of, right? It's easy. It's armchair quarterback center.
Exactly. This is just the perspective I think of the comments. So I think things like this is very eye-opening for people, and they realize it. Yeah, I mean, like, it was the way that Burke, he just did such a shout out to the foundation, and the way that he shared, and listen to that podcast if you can, the way that he shared just from the eyes of like, if someone dies, you see it on the news, and then it's like you forget about the next day. But he doesn't, because he has to deal with, and he has to, he does it voluntarily, but he goes and he helps and assists like the families all the way. And even off air, the stories he would share with me, it's like really sad and serious and horrible. And
it is.
Yeah. It's like terrible.
I couldn't, shout out to Burke, and Burke I've known forever. In fact, I met him in the Bastrop complex in 2011 in Texas, right? And he was out there doing like a relief fund kind of thing. And, he had the foundation booth out there, and he was in ICP, and they're doing their thing. And that's when I first met him. I'm like, I know Vicky. Vicky's the
face
OG.
For a while. Yeah.
Yeah. She's the OG. She's the founder. And then I see how Burke's like reacting to all this stuff going around. And I'm like, he's going to be the next executive director. Watch.
That's so cool.
Which is cool because he has a passion for it, and he's a wonderful human being, and so is Vicky. Vicky is. There's a saying out there. You get 2 types of Vicky, right? You either get Roseanne Barr or Mother Teresa.
It's pretty funny, actually.
No real in between.
That's really funny.
Wonderful human beings, but looking back at like what they encounter and all the quiet parts that they can't say out loud, I couldn't imagine the emotional burden that they would carry.
Pretty
both
massive.
Of them.
Yeah. Pretty massive.
Because it's not just the firefighters. It's not that fell, right? It's their families. It's their friends. It's their loved ones. It gives me chills, man. Like hearing taps when you're at a funeral for a firefighter, that'll break a man. And if it doesn't, it's like the antithesis of hearing your child cry for the first time when they come out of the womb. Yeah. It's the antithesis of that. And it's so powerful and moving. And you hear taps playing at a funeral, or if they're doing like an honorary thing and you see honor guard doing drumline and all that stuff, it moves you. However, it comes at a cost, and its price is paid in blood, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to like the whole grassroots thing too. And like the utterly, I can swear on this podcast, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to go too crazy, but a lot of firefighters are foul mouthed, so I'll try and keep it a little bit PG.
Give us Brandon.
All right. Okay. I'm going to go full bore.
Yeah.
So you go back to the pay, the shitty working conditions, the long hours. I mean, it's a young man and woman sport, but there's nothing like it. It's like almost like battle camaraderie, right? I mean, a lot of veterans will say and compare it to the military, which blows me away because we're not, dodging rounds. We're not, taking IEDs, roadside IEDs or anything like that. It's not like that. But the structure is very paramilitary. The camaraderie comes with that, right? It's a paramilitary organization at the end of the day. It is not to be confused with warfare, though. I will say that. It's not a battle. It's not war. But the shitty working conditions, the inherent danger, the constantly being away from your family and friends, you're at the end of the day, you're a part-time family man, husband. You miss birthdays, you miss funerals, you sacrifice all this crap, and you're just chasing what? A fire, right? Fire's going to do its thing. In fact, fire's a very rejuvenative thing, right? But to make up for that time in the off season, to make ends meet and actually survive, you need to make those sacrifices. And there's no one who's going to tell you that and really truly make you grab it, like understand the gravity of what I'm trying to say here. The boots on the ground that knows exactly what I'm saying. But until you walk a mile in someone's shoes, those boots that you happen to make,
right,
you'll never understand.
Okay, can I ask you a hard question then?
Go ahead.
So then why do they do it?
It's the best job in the world. Passion. There's a joke out there, I mean, back to the pay thing. It's like, yeah, we get paid in sunsets, you know. There's something to be said about that. You're digging holes and making dick and fart jokes with 20 of your best friends in the middle of nowhere, oftentimes untouched by humanity. Like, no one's probably seen this. You'll come across an arc site or a mine and you'll see a can from like the 1800s or a bottle that's like leaded glass.
It's amazing.
It's incredible. You get to see the most awe-inspiring vistas and views, and you can see like you're so far remote and removed from humanity out there, and the only thing you have around you is your crew, and you just be like laying down, going to bed, crash off for the night, and you can just see the entire Milky Way painted across the sky. Wow. It is the most oddly cathartic, beautiful, destructive, and gorgeous thing you'll ever do in your life, and it's all backed up by the rest of the people behind you doing the same exact shit, day in, day out, for 6 to 8 months out of the year. Then they go home, get to be that part-time family man, that part-time husband, and full-time firefighter still.
Yeah.
But you keep coming back.
It's
addictive. I don't know. It's like the most abusive, toxic relationship ever. It's like we're chasing a crack pipe or something.
Honeymoon effect, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a level of like passion for nature, passion for the environment, 100%. Passion for wildlife mixed in with these people, 100%. You know, that are doing this? Okay, because I thought that would be a massive motivator, is just passion for nature.
Oh, yeah.
The outdoors. Yeah.
Just conservation in general. I mean, these are, you know, people that are outdoorsmen and women. They're hunters, they're fishermen, they're all the litany of outdoor stuff, right? Even if they're not, they're still contributing to like the conservation efforts. I mean, you're going to go pick a fist fight with Mother Nature, you better be punching above your weight class.
Where did you grow up?
Well, Reno, Nevada, actually. I'm from San Diego originally, but I don't like saying that out loud. Even though San Diego's cool, but the whole
we won't talk about it.
No, that's San Diego.
So like for someone growing up, maybe I guess I don't know too much about Reno and if there's a lot of fire around there, but like California for sure. Pretty much anybody growing up in California knows what wildfire is, I think.
Yeah, I'd hope so.
I would hope so at this point, right? So do you think that there's a difference between like the kid who grows up around, like let's take Redding, California, because that's a great example. Do you think there's a difference for the kid who grew up in Redding, who has been seeing green buggies since he was 6 and, you know, smoky summers since he was a baby and, you know, knows all about that, versus the guy who like maybe let's say is like from the Midwest where there's just not as much wildfire, like, you know, Wyoming or whatever, you know, or Iowa, the plains. And, you know, I hear a lot of people who like, they live somewhere else and they come here for seasonally and fight fire. Do you think there's a difference in, it's almost like, you know, in Israel, there's military service is mandatory and like they're, you know, they go and fight because they feel like attacked from all these other countries or whatever. Do you think that there's a difference between for that kid that grows up in Redding around fire his whole life, has seen neighborhoods burned down, versus the kid who, or the guy who is, you know, coming from somewhere else? Like there's a bit of a more of a, like I'm fighting for defending my home, so to speak, for the guy who grew up around wildfire. Have you ever seen that before?
I've experienced it.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, 100% there is that caveat to it, and it attracts a certain type of individual. This job is not made for everybody. I mean, a lot of the big burly hotshot types, they don't look like me, but I still made it eventually. Right. I had to work up to it, but there's I have a theory that fuck ups and rancher kids that make the best firefighters.
That's good. That's funny.
I will 100% stick by that till the day I die. But the reality is that these people are warrior poets. And I think that being exposed to it, it's kind of enchanting at first, but then the reality set in, because we're much more than some of the fires that we put out, right? I know lawyers, people that are bar certified lawyers that are jumping out of
intelligent people,
very educated, intelligent people. This is not unskilled labor. So for those politicians out there saying that this is unskilled labor, I call bullshit. This takes a lifetime. This is a pursuit of passion. It's 100% at the end of the day. I mean, granted, it's not really a traditional like, oh, I'm going to go be a doctor. I'm going to be a pediatrician. I'm going to be a lawyer or whatever.
Well, that's not fair because everyone knows when you think of firefighter, you think of a big red truck, or when you think about a doctor, you think of the white lab coat. When you think of a lawyer, you think of the suit and tie in a court case. But nobody knows what wildland fire even is. So it's unfair to say that because it's such a niche. So that's total garbage. It's just, we can throw that out the window.
Yeah. But as bringing it back to the thing, I was like, if you're exposed to it at a very consistently through a young age, I think that you're probably going to have more of a propensity to like actually go towards that route because it's an awesome job. It's especially, like I was saying, those college jobs, like you're just trying to figure life out, those young 20-something-year-olds and like, I've got figured it out yet. So I'm going to go do this. And then it sucks you in. You catch that fire bug. Yeah, I think that definitely exposure helps. But then again, I've seen the most amazing, incredible firemen and women come in from like the Midwest, like you're saying, New York, Vermont. But then again, you got to realize that wildfire, name a continent that wildfire doesn't touch.
Antarctica.
Bingo.
That's it, actually.
Can you name any other?
No.
Exactly.
No.
So wildfire's inexorably connected with humans, right? Yeah. In fact, if it wasn't for fire and us harnessing fire, we'd not be evolved to the species that we are today, or the culture, or the sum of all of our history without fire. We wouldn't have even probably arguably even invented antibiotics.
100%. So if you take that, you know more of this, I'm sure, than I do. But just from like learning in school and just basic, you can just read this up on the internet. But you said it when we were in the truck. Fire is nature's like cleanser.
Yeah, it's nature's garbage disposal.
Nature's garbage disposal. That's what you used. Yeah. So,
and full disclaimer here, I actually started a new job with a wonderful company called BurnBot. And imagine, I guess, the TLDR version. It's a tech startup, but imagine like a forestry Roomba.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, it's not really a Roomba. It's all human controlled by remote, but we do a system of forestry masticators that grinds up stuff like the vegetation and stuff, but it's on the ground. So what we're trying to do is reduce the effects of catastrophic wildfire and like damaging wildfires, right? If you were to say, oh, we need to stop wildfires, I'm going to look at you and be like, you want to what? You want to turn off nature's garbage disposal, so then natural starts of lightning are going to be that much more dangerous and destructive to our landscape.
Or some spark from a chain or something like that. Yeah.
Or someone shooting out like rocks, not paying attention, and they spark a wildfire and it goes rips, and then it's generational damage onto our lands rather than, nature's garbage disposal where the tree canopies are still intact. You have game returning, you have like morels popping out of the burn scar, you have new growth. It's a very regenerative process. So what BurnBot does is they have this thing called the RX1 that they're developing, and they're trying to put more fire on the landscape so we don't have another campfire. We don't have another August complex. We don't have these gigafires that are ultra destructive because of, I'm not even going to like bring up climate change. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. We have removed fire from our environment for the last 100 and something years, ever since 1910 with the big burn and the implementation of the 10 a.m. policy. Back then, we had this knee-jerk reaction and thought we could play God and say every fire from here on out will be put out by 10 a.m. the next day. That is the goal. That is the ultimate mission. What do?
You turned off nature's garbage disposal.
Precisely. So BurnBot's trying to put that garbage disposal back on because we fucked everything up.
Wow. That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Can you touch on a little bit more specifically just this thing? I just think for our listeners, this is cool. The subject of just forestry, like maintenance, cleanup. One time I had a firefighter customer who told me that, I think it might've even been like the lightning complex or something like that. It was one of those years. He said to me, he's like, oh, I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
He's like, because science. Yeah. Cause he's like 2 years before that, we were walking around in that area and there was like 2 or 3 feet of just, pine needles, debris, fallen branches. It was dry. And he's like, that wasn't a surprise to us. Like we knew that was coming. Mm-hmm. So can you just share on like, what is even the right kind of, in your opinion, forestry cleanup maintenance, and why do you think it's not happening, and what should it look like?
And I'm going to refer to history on this one, right? So if you look at It's actually, I'm not going to say the name of it. I can't say too much about this documentary that's coming out because I don't want to out the guy, but it's going to be dropping here pretty soon and it's great. He makes a comparison of the indigenous cultures and their use of fire, right? Across the entire globe. Name an indigenous culture that hasn't used fire to attract game and rejuvenate the landscape.
I feel like that's just everyone did that. No one
globally.
Yeah.
Globally, right? So if you look at like some of the trees, and we're seeing carbon dating from these tree ring samples that go back to since before Jesus was born.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, for written history, we have things growing on our landscape in fire adapted ecosystems that predate written history.
Amazing.
Why is that?
You tell me.
Because it was managed by the indigenous peoples across the globe. That is something that we need to look for. We need to look to our past. I mean, gigafires, megafires, these million-acre fires, they're nothing new. They've happened before. They're going to continue to happen. And it sucks, right? However, if we were to manage our landscapes properly and use the right tool for the right job, whether that's prescribed fire or stacking sticks and doing prescribed burns, like manual labor, stacking up pile burns and stuff in the right ecosystem. Like not every ecosystem is fire adapted. I will say that. So I try not to be like super reductionist here, but more fire. We need more fire on the landscape, productive, good fire. And I cannot stress that enough. It's like, what would you rather bitch about right now? Some prescribed fire smoke where it's minimal, where it's dissipating, it's over in a week, or would you rather deal with what New York is dealing with? It's like, welcome to the club. This is what the West has been dealing with for the past forever.
Yeah.
But this is not something that is going to go away. You're always going to have wildfire. You're always going to have smoke. You're always going to have the buildup of debris on the land. But if we were to use a tool that is arguably as safe and the risk versus reward ratio with fire, using fire on the landscape to just turn on and replicate nature's garbage disposal, we need to be doing more of that. We need to be empowering people and educating people to put more fire on the land, because I would rather not deal with months of smoke. I'd rather deal with the couple weeks.
It's so interesting. So
it's so counterproductive in thought, right?
So you need more smaller fires to have less of these massive big fires.
Yes. And it's not even like it's very nuanced, right? It's these massive mega wildfires, whatever you want to call it, the Pyrocene era that we live in, right? Excellent book, by the way. Check it out. They're going to continue to happen, but of those million acres, what was productive? What was beneficial for the land? However, if you look to, I have a favorite fly fishing spot. It's Hat Creek, right? It's in California. Great place, right? Out the Lassen. It's right off the Lassen Mountain National Park there, and beautiful country, right? And they stock it above a bunch of dumb fish because I'm a horrible fisherman. So, anyways, going out there, you past a town called Susanville. If you're driving from Reno to Hat Creek, there's this fire that happened out there, and it's called the Hog Fire, with 2 G's. I want to say that happened about 4 years ago. And to this day, there's not a damn thing growing on that landscape except for invasive species and weeds on the side of the road. I drove through there the other day, in fact, and it's a deadscape. It has been so much fuel loading and fuel buildup and the lack of fire on the landscape that it built to this like catastrophe to where it sterilized land. The microbes are gone. The mycelium layer is gone. It is a deadscape, and now you just have a bunch of standing dead trees that are burnt to a crisp, just matchsticks.
Wow.
For as far as the eye can see on both sides of the road in some places of 395, or what is that, the 44, whatever highway that is. That's the kind of stuff that's irreparable. It's not irreparable because over time it will grow back. It will. However, my kids are not going to see the same forest that I grew up in. I used to go there with my dad and go fishing at Hat Creek. We used to go mess around. We used to go drive through there all the time to my uncle's place up in Coffee Creek. My kids aren't going to be able to see that. It was like a little piece of my passion, my outdoors, my conservation efforts that I've spent 11 years of my life doing is gone. And I'm really concerned that in 50 years, it's just going to be the same RuneScape.
Can you share your thoughts on why you think conservation, or is the conservation the right word?
I don't even know. I just don't know what else to put to it besides
So
conservation.
why isn't it happening on a larger scale?
Because the problem is so massive, right? You have with the Bureau of Land Management, the Department of the Interior, which manages the Bureau of Land Management, the Fish and Wildlife, national parks, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and the Bureau of Land Management. Yeah. And you have the Forest Service, right? Those are public lands. Those are federally owned public lands. That's you and I. Mm-hmm. That's our land, right?
Right. Which you still have to pay to go see a national park, but whatever.
Comes with the territory. You got to take care
of the territory.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me started on that. I'm going to soapbox, but I got to say, just if you're going to go to a national park and pay to be there, don't shit on the land. I mean, for F's sakes, man, just take care of it. Okay.
Ass movement.
The ass movement.
Shout out to him. Yes. Please go look him up and do what he says.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I was talking about more of a figurative sense. Like, don't leave a mess. Don't leave your fucking tent behind.
I agree. No.
Clean up.
100%.
Yeah. Don't treat it like shit.
And maybe you could say the other side, there's a reason that we charge to get in there because of
assholes.
Because of people who do that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing, though, is like anyways, I digress. We have between the two agencies, I want to say 640 million acres across the United States, including Alaska, I believe.
647. You said it earlier.
Was it 647 I said earlier?
Yeah.
I know. I'm sure someone will
give or take
me.
Right?
Yeah. Kentucky windage there. Think about that in scale, right?
Yeah.
How many states is that? We're measuring that land in states.
I don't even know how to I don't even know what that looks like. I can't wrap my head around it.
It's an unfathomable number, right? You can't comprehend that number. And like being out in the middle of 640 million acres.
You look over a valley of like a 10,000 acre parcel or something like that. And it's just like, it just goes on and on and on. This is, tens of thousands of times larger. That's just ridiculous.
Take the highest peak around here to where you can climb up it and you have the clear line of sight. 360-degree view to where you can see the curvature of the earth. You will not see that.
A drop in the bucket of that, yeah.
That's a lot of land. Now there's, on a good year of hiring, there's about 50,000 wildland firefighters or people that can do the job from a federal side. They're firefighters. They're not land managers. They're not the ones out there doing the prescriptions for burning. They're not the ones doing the prescriptions for fuels reductions. They're not the people that are doing all the other stuff. They're being asked to as a subsidiary duty, as like an add-on duty, right? Other duties as assigned. That problem right there, you cannot hire your way out of. So if you don't use something like fire to where it's effective and relatively safe, as long as it's put on the ground in the right kind of prescription, hence prescribed fire, how do you go through and treat all these acres of land unless you have nature's help? And now on top of that, you got to throw on top of those 640 million acres of land, you got to throw state land, municipal lands, anything that is covered by wildfire, private. Yeah. I mean, what do you do? How do you hire your way out of that problem? You can't.
Wow.
Shout out to Burnbot. We're trying to solve that problem.
Yeah. But so are you in a way, are you suggesting that if the United States had never started doing that thing that they did in 1910 and they had just let wildfires be wildfires, would we not be in the situation we're in today? Like, in other words, did trying to just go put out fires like crazy stop the natural process, and then just it made it compounding worse and worse over time?
Yes. We've accelerated that, right? Now, this fire loading, these explosive fires are going to occur naturally over time. Sometimes fires, and especially in very particularly wet or fire resilient ecosystems, they just don't happen. They don't happen that often. So you're going to get that natural fuel loading. One of the largest and most deadly wildfires ever was in like Michigan or something like that. It started the same day as like the Great Fire of Chicago. I don't know what year that was. I'd have to look it up.
Early 1900s, yeah.
Early 1900s, and it killed thousands of people. They don't even have a body count.
That's horrible.
In fact, the big burn of 1910, it was a couple million acres. It stretched from this neck of the woods throughout Montana and up into Canada.
You said that Great Fire was in Michigan?
The current one right now.
Yeah.
But another one too, previous history. Yeah. So these fires, these extreme gigafires and mega fires, they weren't as frequent back then, but they did happen. But if you look fast forward today, where we've moved fire from the landscape, what are we doing to ourselves? I mean, are we just accelerating that process of waiting for the next mega fire, gigafire, whatever the hell you want to call it? Yes, we are. I am a firm believer that we are. We're compounding a problem, and it's not necessarily that, fire season is getting longer. It's hotter, it's drier, but I think the most dooming thing is that fire has changed. It has changed fundamentally the way we attack it, the way we engage it, and the danger and the risk associated with it. So these hyper destructive fires that you're seeing right now, that is compounded from this bullshit 10 a.m. policy when we're trying to play God. Now you're walking into a fire environment where you have explosive growth, and the intensity has the capability to sterilize land. Like I said, this is nothing new, but it's happening more frequently. And that's kind of scary. Like the fires that aren't, if they're in the right area with this massive fuel loading, if they aren't suppressed right away and they get away from the management team or whoever's attacking that fire, and it's a red flag day with the right weather conditions, you're going to have things like the car fire. You're going to have the campfire. You're going to have these insanely fast moving through very, very dense vegetation more frequently. It's more dangerous. It sucks, dude.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what I mean by catastrophic wildfire. It's like generational damage to the landscape or communities.
I feel that it should be taken much more seriously.
You're planning, how do you sell what ifs?
How do you sell them?
Yeah. I mean, insurance, people buy insurance,
Fear,
right?
Just fear,
And that's why I want to take the climate change thing out of it, because this is something that wildfire is something that we can manage.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we should play God, but I think we should put more fire on the landscape. We have something that's in our control, yet we don't like to smell smoke. I don't know what it is. We need to reestablish our loving relationship with fire. I think wildfire.
This might be an interesting question for you. There's I don't really even know what title to put on it, but there's I would say a movement or a community of individuals who are all about like, don't cut the trees down, don't touch the forest, leave it alone. Kind of like that's maybe extreme, but that community exists.
Yeah.
What is your view on that approach? Because from my interpretation would be that from what you're saying, it sounds like that's the worst thing you could do, and you should. I'm not saying clear cut, but you should take care of and manage and cut down dead trees and bad trees and all this stuff. So can you speak into maybe that part? Because there's kind of like this like nature movement going on too.
There is. And, clear cutting sucks. It's ugly. But a lot of the clear cutting that you see in Oregon and Washington, it's all on private land, and they have laws and regulations. And
they replant, actually.
They have to. They're legally required to. It just sucks. But the turnover, it's actually a really good sustainable resource in some areas. I mean, I think the turnover on a harvestable timber crop of like Doug fir is like 20 years.
Yeah, 20 or 30 years. So I made a pair of boots for a logger who told me that he clear cut a forest when he was just getting started. Mm-hmm. And then around retirement age, he clear cut that same forest again.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's true story.
True story, right?
Yeah.
But loggers, they manage land, right?
Yeah.
Because there's money involved with it. Of course, that's their bottom line.
Yep.
I get it. But for the folks that think that wildfire is bad and is destroying Bambi's habitat, well, it is. But if you destroy Bambi's habitat to where you nuke everything to where they can never come back.
Yeah, what's worse, right? Pick your poison, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to go the nuclear option, or do you want to go the tactical option and be like more specific on what we want to pick our battles over?
Well, not even that. I mean, I think that this thing about people who like, completely, don't touch it at all. Human interaction is humans are the problem with everything all the time, and no human interaction. It sounds like from what you're saying, actually, in this particular sense, we need a little bit more human interaction to manage, so there's not these massive gigafires, like taking care of the forest, because it sounds, you said indigenous cultures did do that.
Yeah, trees older. I mean, answering the question of why we have trees older than predating written history, right? In some of these areas.
Yeah.
It's because it was managed. It was used specifically to fire adapted ecosystems. This was managed. It attracted game. It invigorated the soil. Some of these species, like I think it's redwoods, giant sequoias, Yosemite, right?
Yep.
They're fire dependent. Their cones can't even open and spread seeds unless they have the perfect amount of heat to open them up, right?
Wow, that's interesting.
The Native Americans, the indigenous cultures across the entire globe have been doing this, right? Or else we wouldn't have these trees, right?
Wow.
these old trees. Now, a hands-off policy in certain contexts, yes, absolutely. Like if a wilderness area is doing, if lightning strikes in a wilderness area and it's, you're not allowed entry. Okay, fine. What's the fire doing? Is it productive or is it bad? When do we choose to intervene? Is there a wind event coming back through like in 2 days? Do we need to get in there and hit it small and keep it small? Pick your battles, right? Now, as far as the management process, and I've seen this, I'm Lake Tahoe is my back door, right? That's like my backyard. When you have over management of forests and ecosystems, it's the same nuclear option. You're going to get the same result. And we have never learned this over the course of history, and it sucks. What does over management look like?
Lack of cutting, lack of management, over management as in over management as in restriction to what you can do. How about that?
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. Yeah. Like don't touch it. Don't do anything.
That's probably a poor decision.
Yeah.
But then again, don't touch it for something that's productive and beneficial. Okay.
Yeah.
Pick your poison. I mean, it's very contextual. It's very nuanced. It's what is going to be the best outcome for
that particular situation, that forest, that time.
Very specific.
So it sounds like there's no just kind of like government blanket order that's just going to cover everything.
No, there's not. And it's up to, the smarter ologist types, biologists, all those folks.
Because you're just the unskilled laborer.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But I've seen the effects of mismanagement.
Firsthand, right?
Firsthand. I've been there. Yeah. And a lot of people on the boots on the ground will say the same exact thing. In fact, I had a gentleman and his wife, Nelda St. Clair and Ron Boyer. Ron Boyer was old-timey hotshot. Like he's salt. Dude's got salt. He's probably the longest hotshot to ever to hotshot on a hotshot crew.
That's really cool.
It was cool. And he said two very profound things to me. He said, one, that the fire regime has changed. Every time you step foot off that buggy, off that helicopter skid, off that engine, out of that door of the airplane, if you're jumping in, the fire environment has changed. It's not the same fight anymore. Back when I was in the height of my career and superintendent on, I think it was Dalton Hotshots, he was saying that like a 20,000 acre fire, that's like a big ass fire. That's a campaign fire. This is like everybody from all the resources from all around the country are coming and convening and to put this thing out, right? Now you're seeing 1 million acre fires. What in the hell is going on?
What do you even do?
What do you do? Yeah. I mean, granted, those 1 million acres, like some of it was very intense. Some of it was like perfect mosaic pattern burn that you would want in that ecosystem. But where do drawing the box, we call it drawing the box around a fire, an incident, right? Like, okay, this box, well, the fire escaped here. That box is no longer valid. So you keep drawing bigger boxes around it and like strategically planning where you can hold it, right? The box is infinitely bigger, and it's not really necessarily a management thing. It's a combination of fuel loading, weather events, availability of resources, which the federal resources are dwindling in mass numbers because they're not paying them, bringing it back to the whole GS3, $14, $13, $14 an hour thing. It's no wonder why this problem is it's stuck in a feedback loop, like a negative feedback loop where it's just compounding itself and compounding itself and compounding itself. And it's already I don't want to say it's too late, but it will become that if we don't get a button on this.
Like the 11th hour type situation.
Yeah, this is crunch time. And mark my words, if we don't get a handle on this, if we don't start actively managing our forests, I'm not going to say we're not going to have any, but this situation that's going on in New York and New Jersey right now with the smoke,
it's going to be a lot more often.
Yeah, it's going to be way more frequent. It's going to suck. I mean, shit, the Amazon was burning down 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was. That's true. Yeah.
And a lot of it was human starts too, because they're taking that land and they're turning it into either mines or cattle grazing areas, and nature's fighting back. You can't fight it. You might as well work with her instead of against her and try and play God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you, I want to just shift gears like to your career, and I think this kind of ties in. Can you speak on the different agencies maybe that you've been a part of, and then does each agency have a different approach to their procedure or the way they do things, or is it kind of all standardized across the board, like hopping from BLM to Forest Service to CAL FIRE to DNR to ODF? Is it all kind of the same rule book? Do they do things differently? I was always curious about that because I will hear that guys will sometimes go from like,
fed agency to fed agency, and then, maybe, or from private to fed agency and state or something like that. Is it like a big deal to transfer?
Yeah, no, actually it's not. Even if, so we have this thing as a governing body called the NWCG, the National Wildfire Coordinating Group, right? And they set the bar. It's like the NFPA standards, which you're probably familiar with building boots, right?
Absolutely.
So the NFPA set standards for PPE, right? NFPA 1977, which is not a year, by the way.
It's not a year.
It's like it's a legal code. So a lot of people think it's a year. It's not. But anyways, the NWCG standards, that's going to be setting the training and performance, the typing of crews, the minimum requirements for tools, the fitness standards, all of this stuff that defines what a wildland firefighter is and what their qualifications are, all listed under this, right? NWCG standards. And that needs to be adhered to federally. It doesn't matter if you're a state resource, a private contractor, a Bureau of Land Management, a parkie, Forest Service, it doesn't matter. We all operate under the same standards, and that creates uniformity with like that paramilitary organization.
So there is a standardization.
There is a standardization, which is good. I mean, granted, each different agency is going to have its little nuances. Like the Bureau of Land Management, for instance, they do, they're a smaller agency. They're not a big organization like the Forest Service, right? That's a lot of stuff moving. They can't turn on a dime and pivot. However, they have a little bit more agility. They're a smaller agency, but they can do a lot more because they don't have to ask necessarily for permission.
The BLM can.
That's just for one instance. I'm giving that a lot of latitude there. I'm being real generalist right there. It's a smaller agency. Like, for instance, the Bureau of Land Management, for the most part, does localized hiring instead of centralized hiring. Like the Forest Service will do hiring from a Albuquerque Service Center. It controls all of the Forest Service HR. Doesn't matter what your job is, all of it goes through there.
Wow.
Whereas the Bureau of Land Management, being a smaller agency, they can be like, local hiring event. Hey, high school kids, you want to do a exciting career of wildland fire? You. Here, fill out this application. Here's the USA Jobs link. This is how you do it. Cool, you're hired. Go on. But no one wants to risk their life for $15 an hour when they go make $22 an hour flipping burgers at.
Do the feds lose a lot of people to like private contractors and state agencies?
100%.
All the time, probably.
Yeah, and that's where the whole grassroots thing is all about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, bringing it back to the whole conversation about the foundation, like we were mentioning about all the pictures all over the walls of fallen firefighters, right? A consequence and a fallout of the poor pay, the shitty working conditions, the time away from your family, the going from 120 miles an hour in one direction during the season, being a high level operator, right? You're a firefighter. You got to be dialed in to. Come October, when you're getting laid off, you just slam that truck in practically reverse. It's like you lose your sense of purpose, you lose all of this stuff. And you know what's really chilling, man? It's like when I walk through the hallways, I've got probably upwards of 11 people on those walls. Unfortunately, I want to say like the consequence of all of these like shitty working conditions and all the compounding things like pay and benefits and all this stuff and the destruction, the cumulative stress, the bullshit of working for the government, it adds up.
With all of that, yeah.
I want to say 2/3 to maybe even 3/4 of those 11 people that I know on those walls in the foundation have committed suicide.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it's no wonder why, I'm sorry, man. It's real. And if it wasn't for the foundation, if it wasn't for grassroots, if it wasn't for folks like you, if it wasn't for Mystery Ranch, folks over at Mystery Ranch, trying to tell the story of wildland firefighters, the struggles that they do, the successes that they have, the triumphs, the good, bad, the ugly, indifferent, it doesn't matter. If it wasn't for all these people telling that story, we wouldn't have changed it. But it still has a lot of work to go. Yeah.
Burke touched on their mental awareness, mental health program that they're doing.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
There's anecdotal evidence out there, and it's all on. The reason why I say anecdotal is because it's not officially documented or studied, but anecdotal evidence out there saying that wildland firefighters outpace the military per capita for suicide.
Wow.
What are we doing to ourselves?
Something not good. Wow.
There's a lot of changes that need to be had, but it's far too large and too many of them. The amount of them is like just not any one person can do it. So it takes an army.
Well, I guess thank God a little more then for people like Burke and the foundation and their whole mental health and mental awareness shift. He told me that was something that was, I don't want to say newer because it's not, but the maybe focus on it has increased. And he also mentioned that just recently with, he brought into kind of play the change of generation, change of culture, phones, social media, younger people. It's kind of, he mentioned that it feels like it's heightened. Just this thing with the seriousness of mental health has just really become a lot more heavy is kind of the way that he described it.
I think it's also because of, for instance, like, this is how bad of a problem is. And the only reason why I say that is bring it back to the Anchor Point podcast, right? Every single one of my guests, every single one of them has brought up mental health. Like cued.
Yeah.
Not prompted. I don't script any of my shit. It's all unedited. It's all long form. It's unscripted.
It's not a coincidence.
It's not a coincidence that every single, I call it 98% of my guests have brought up mental health and the concerns of mental health on their own volition. That tells me that there's not a problem, but a fucking crisis.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's nothing new that the foundation has been doing. They've been doing this for years. However, the culture and the perspective, I think, has changed to where it's more acceptable to be public about it.
Yeah.
And every one of my guests that has brought up the topic, and they've shared some very, very deep stories with me, like publicly, globally. That's amazing. I think it's becoming more accepted. Like the culture for the longest time was shut up and dig. Your problems are your own. Don't come to me with problems unless you got a solution, right? And that's the same thing for mental health. It's like people that fought in World War II. Why did they not have the same mental health fallout that soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan do today?
What do you think the answer to that is?
I don't know, but I have a theory.
Sure.
I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a mental health clinician, but I do have a theory, and it's been like talked about by a couple of my mental health clinician friends, like doctorates of psychology, right? They had time to decompress. We didn't have the speed of information. We didn't have the speed of travel. We didn't have the luxury of expediting every little action that we do for efficiency like we do today back then, right? Soldiers fighting in the European front, they had to sail back to the Atlantic with their unit. And what are you going to do on a ship when you're locked up on a cargo ship?
Weeks.
Weeks.
Yeah.
You're going to talk about shit. You're going to say the quiet part out loud, and you're going to confide, just like basically like what we're doing right here.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
We don't have that convenience today. We don't have that time. We don't have that kick it into the crawl gear and talk about this shit. And it's, I want to say that we had a harder generation back then. I mean, there's 15-year-olds over there, getting the Medal of Honor. Like, if you want to talk about the European front, shit, look at what happened in the Pacific.
I think life was more demanding in that time. And I think that there was less, not the word luxury. That's not the right word. There was less, the word that comes to mind is like, it was less lackadaisical 60, 70, 80 years ago. And there was, I think, more demands on younger people sooner than there maybe is today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could agree with that too.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they still have the time to decompress.
That's the biggest thing. Also, I mean, you didn't have an overload of ridiculous amount of information at your fingertips all the time, every single moment of every day.
What happens to you when you go to a concert and you see a concert and there's millions of people, like not millions of people, but a couple thousand people looking at the same thing, and they all got their Snapchat out. They all got their Instagram out.
It dehumanizes everything.
Not only that, but the bandwidth of your cell phone. If you're trying to make a phone call during that time, good luck. You're not going to get a text message out because the network's overloaded. Yeah. Now, flip that script onto what we're receiving as humans with the speed of information coming at you at the speed of light.
Yeah.
Your network's getting uploaded, but the network is your own brain.
Wow.
That's my theory on that. And bringing it back to the foundation, like I said, this is nothing new. I think it's just more culturally acceptable to talk about this stuff and like push for the proper things that we need. Because not talking about it, not having peer support, not having, the stigma, I think that's a good thing.
So what about you? Where are you at with this?
I want to say that because of the podcast, it's accelerated all the guests that have brought up this topic and they're talking about very deep, intimate things. Like I did Lucas, for instance, with Mystery Ranch. He's talked about very deep, intimate moments of contemplating his own life. Dude literally had a gun in his mouth. Same thing with my buddy Walker. He used to be my assistant superintendent on Ely Hell Attack. Same fucking thing, man. But to say that out loud to a global audience, one that takes the most insane amount of courage.
Yeah.
But if it could help one person, let them know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate form of mentorship that I could ever even perceive.
Yeah. Also an insane amount of security in yourself and just in your identity that, hey, I went through that and there's light on the other end.
Yeah. I mean, that too is like, it's relieving for them too. I think it's like not a
for the person sharing,
but
it's like closure.
Yeah. Could you imagine that burden being lifted off your chest?
I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost when I don't want to say it's not admitting because you didn't do anything wrong, but it's just, darkness can't be where there's light. So anytime the light shines in, it's like the darkness goes away. So if you open up to certain things, it is almost liberating to just, just kind of getting it off of your chest. Well, that's very heavy. So how long have you been out of fire?
I've been out of fire for 4 years.
So you're decompression.
So I used to have actually anxiety and like, not necessarily like, I'm not going to say PTSD because it's become a buzzword, right? Wearing a backpack, something as simple as that backpack I walked out of the airport with when I got in your truck, right?
Yeah.
I used to have anxiety because I was putting on work. My office wasn't sitting at a desk like building bitching videos for anybody, it wasn't that. It was being out in the woods wearing 40 pounds of shit on my back and possibly a chainsaw and trying to dodge rocks that are falling down the hill, trying to keep awareness of where my crew's at, all that stuff, right? So when I got out of fire and I would wear a backpack, something as innocuous as a backpack, it'd give me like extreme anxiety. Extreme anxiety because I was in work brain mode, right? That was my office. I put my office on. I wore it, right? You know what helped me the most, man? Inadvertently fly fishing. It's meditation, man. It's a very meditative thing that you do. You're out in nature. You're grounded. You're in the water. You're like, if you're free wading without waders on, you're like connected with the earth. You take your shoes off and like fuck around and like, it's very rhythmic motion. It's like no different than a Tibetan monk doing some sort of meditation, man. And I was always wearing my my backpack doing it. And I think that inadvertently like helped heal that anxiety.
The connection between the pack and the bad experience. Now it's a pack and a good experience.
And it's something that I enjoy. It's not something that I'm in threat of my life of.
That's a really nice just illustration because I can think of similar, for someone else, it's, I don't know what, it's driving and whatever, but like that's really nice. So you took that thing that was...
I didn't even know I was doing it.
Wow.
Yeah. But I took that thing, which was intimately connected with a source of anxiety. And like, yeah, it was very healing, man. And so I had no idea until I talked to a therapist about it.
Wow.
And she was like, yeah, that's essentially EMDR, just different.
Yeah. So post, 4 years now out of fire, are you in a better place than you were mentally when you were even in the middle of your fire season? Are you like in the middle of your career? Are you still going through decompression stuff? Do you still feel like you're still getting things out? How has the podcast, just, talking to all these people, hearing their stories, because I bet there's actually even added things because you've all these episodes, all these stories, all these people, you probably know more about the fire world than maybe even the common wildland firefighter just because you've been so much around all these people.
Yeah, and these people, dwarf experience of mine. They dwarf it, by decades. A lot of these folks that are on the podcast. I only have 11 years in the game, and some of these people have 30, 40 years in the game, 35 years in the game. And it's hearing their stories and having them share some of that stuff and like letting me even know that I'm not alone. If I'm getting that effect, like who else is out there getting that effect? Like I said, if it helps one person, man,
it's 100% worth it.
It's a win, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I've learned probably arguably more about fire, especially the culture and what makes us tick, and just fire in general. I mean, from interviewing people, it's like that whole old adage of like, hey, if you want to really learn something, teach it. I don't know if you ever heard that before.
Absolutely. 100%. That's the best way to master something. Yeah.
Teach it, right?
Yeah, teach it. Yeah.
It feels like I'm not teaching anybody. I'm not going to like say I'm a subject master at anything. I'm not. However, the people that I've had the luxury and the privilege of interviewing have taught me an immense amount, and being able to regurgitate that out to a global audience, man, that is special, man. I'm very, very thankful for everybody.
That's like gold. That's gold. Business marketing world compared to wildland fire world.
No comparison.
I mean, what do you enjoy this other side of life now?
I do, actually. I still got my ticks, and I still got like I hate using the word trigger, but I still have like the little things that stress me out. Like, if there's like a situation that I know I can't problem solve through, and it's like take for instance my kids, right? If I had a real hard time when they're like screaming and there's nothing you can do about it, they're just pissed. They just want to scream for the sake of screaming. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not hungry. They're not hot. They're not whatever. They're not in pain. They didn't hurt themselves.
Total emotional experience.
They're just having a fucking meltdown, right?
Yeah.
I would always instantaneously like default to that like fix the problem mode, right? And it took me. I still struggle with it, but I've gotten better. But you want to fix that problem, so. Yeah, I mean, that's one of those stressors that kind of still gets me. Another thing that I still think kind of makes my hair stand up is if I'm watching like a TV show, especially if they have tone outs, like when they dispatch a call, like a fire, they have what's called a tone out. And it's like a tone that is a identifier of your station or your unit or your battalion or whatever that goes before the actual like size up of the fire and like location and all that stuff, right? The dispatch.
Okay.
If I hear that on the TV, I'm just like, I got like look around. I'm like, oh wait, this is not fire.
Wow.
It's weird. It's like the little shit that gets you, right? Trees creaking in the forest. You want to see like a lot of wildland firefighters. Trees smoke a lot of wildland firefighters, like falling trees. Like take a group of former wildland firefighters out into the woods and
go for a recreational hike
during a light wind.
Yeah,
like
sure.
a light breeze, and see how many trees creak, and they'd be like looking for widowmakers, looking for falling trees.
Wow.
It's weird, but you don't. The culture is like, you kind of like it's like the whole being a man thing, or just being like the tough individual, right? You have expectations to uphold. You have to be calm under pressure. It's like a medic, responding to an emergency scene or a big red fire, like structure fire department going to a vehicle accident, right, or a structure fire. Calm as a Hindu cow when they're going through that incident, but what is that doing? Where are you burying that? How do you unbury that and address it? And the culture for the longest of time, man, it's just been, just bury it deep down. And that's why you have the problems with suicide, depression, self-medication with drugs and alcohol, divorce rate skyrockets. It's no wonder, because you just don't want to talk about it.
If I can share a small part of my experience in dealing with wildland firefighters as customers, the overwhelming, and obviously in every single industry and market and career, you always have your bad apples in everything. So you can't ever get away from that anytime.
It's just like a shitty hot shot crew versus a good one.
Yeah, exactly.
They exist.
There's good doctors, bad doctors, good lawyers, bad lawyers, good cops, bad cops. But let's talk about just wildland firefighters. The overwhelming majority of wildland firefighters, guys and gals, are just, they're a pleasure as customers. They're a pleasure to work with. They're so wonderfully simple people. What I mean by that is you get exactly what you see. There's no games or...
They got nothing to hide.
They got nothing to hide. Super transparent people, easy customers most of the time, the overwhelming majority, and they like quality. They want a good product. And so
buy once, cry once.
Exactly. And it's a nice marriage because we provide a good product. You want a nice product? Great. And so it's fun to do that, to go to these shows and academies and travel out and go and fit crews and stuff. I was just in California fitting some crews, and it's cool. The most recent one that I was at, they were grilling chicken, and they grilled me some chicken too.
Oh yeah, dude.
So it was cool. It's just good people, good spirited people, good natured, good hearted people, guys and gals. Very just. It's weird. It's almost like that you would expect that there's going to be this like super level of like, which not that there isn't, but almost like so much like professionalism. And I was like, military is like, it's military.
It's
like
you're standing in
uniform
and regiment and
and
all
most
stuff,
military guys are always like, they don't talk very much, and it's like, down to the, right to the point, no frills. And it was surprising, a lot of wildland, it's almost like, man, if I didn't know you weren't a wildland firefighter, I would just think that you're just a mature, just adult person. And you don't even know that this guy, 7 months out of the year, 8 months is out there, risking his life doing crazy things. It's just, it's so interesting. They just seem like your regular neighborhood guy and he's doing this life risking crazy job. So it was a very cool experience. And I've always done customer service here, so I've always been on the phones and emails and stuff, and overwhelmingly it's always pleasant phone calls, pleasant emails, easy to communicate with, easy customers, so that's really cool. And so I think that speaks a lot into just the culture that wildland firefighting invites and the type of people that it attracts. Mm-hmm. And I think it attracts your common man who just wants to work hard and loves nature, loves the environment, loves serving. They're super servant people. They're risking their lives for this stuff. So it was a cool glimpse into that. Whereas, I could pick on other industries where it's almost like if you build out for me the personality, I could almost guess maybe what kind of profession they do. And I don't know why that is. It's
just stereotypes that exist with everything, man. It's the tech bro. I'm one of them, but I'm also not, right?
Exactly. It's just something that it's just there. But if I had to name the personality for a wildland firefighter, it's respectful, kind, down to earth. And I use the word simple in a positive context where there's no frills or masks or some kind of hidden agenda, extremely transparent people. So that's been a really cool experience that I've had. And it's a pleasure to even deal with this customer base and market, so to speak. And as we've been growing over the years, you kind of now have this thing where it's okay, we have we have our general customer base, which is all of our people.
Yeah.
But then within that customer base, you have your markets and you have your groups and you have your community and whatever word you want to use. And we always speak about the wild and fire community as its own individual group customer base, and we treat them specifically that way. We don't for example, if you have a HVAC, electrician, plumber, framer, roofer, sider, it's you would just say, okay, that's construction.
Yeah.
If you have an arborist, a lineman, and whatever kind of, okay, that's the climbing guys, because they need kind of the same kind of product. And then maybe you have a welder, fabricator, machinist, mechanic, a foreman. Yeah. You would kind of group them together because it's concrete floor, oil, whatever, little communities. But the wildland firefighting one, you can't put anything else in there. And I don't put anything else in there because not only is the profession specific, but the type of individual is specific as well. And we're no, we're going to treat these people, we're going to have a specific product. It's a specific base. It's a specific list of individuals. And it's so special and so important to our business model. And it's important to our base that we put it in its own category. And
you kind of have to, though.
You kind of have to. Yeah.
I mean, where do you, it's not a wrench. It's not a screwdriver. It's not a hammer. It's a Swiss Army knife, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It is literally. And so it's so cool to see that. And like I said, they're very special people, good people. And it's almost, maybe this is too far, but I feel like I can. But I feel like if somebody calls in and you start talking to them, I feel like within the first 10 or 15 seconds, I can almost tell if this is a firefighter or if it's not. I don't know what it is. I just think it's the way that they kind of talk and carry themselves. And it's almost like you can tell. And also I feel like I can tell if this is a guy who's been a seasoned firefighter for 20 years, because usually they kind of all say the same stuff. They're always kind of
they have a common vernacular.
Exactly. Yeah. It's hey man, you got fire boots on the shelf, black rough outs. They use that terminology. You got the black rough outs? Yeah, I do. I'm a 10D, and everyone's a 10D, or whatever. It's it's that seems like
it's
that's
just no. Yeah.
It's just they know there's. I've been 11E my whole life or whatever, and so it's funny, it's cool, and I love that type of customer because they know what they want, they know what they're after, and they're easy and it's simple, and they know what they're getting themselves into. It's just cool. So for us as a business, the wildland fire community has been nothing but a blessing. We built JK Boots on the wildland fire community, and the ability for I think other customers now to just they're coming in to our business, and now we get to service other professions and trades too. It's so cool as well. But the core or the middle, the meat of it has been and is to this day this logger wildland fire individual.
It's like the Venn diagram that circles wildland fire, right?
Right. And so super grateful, forever grateful to the community. And like for all the other guys, because obviously like you just mentioned, there's 50, 60,000 wildland firefighters.
And there's heavy expectations with wildland firefighters too.
Extremely heavy expectations. And obviously there's way more people in America that are not wildland firefighters than are wildland firefighters.
But you could take wildland firefighter stuff and put it into
100%.
Yeah, the rest of
And
that.
so it's almost like, thanks for the demand that logging and firefighting put on this product, that we met the demands of that product. And now people who aren't necessarily from those trades almost get to like reap the benefit of having to create a product that met those demands. If that made sense, what I just said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, you know, could you have gotten away with a cheaper boot for a mechanic, a diesel mechanic? Yes, you could have. But because we had to meet this demand, now this diesel mechanic gets to like, oh wow, look what's available now to me that might not have been available if there wasn't this insane job that was out in the fire in the forest for 21 days straight fighting fire, sleeping in their boots, like day in, day out,
eating that turd sandwich.
Exactly, whatever. So it's just kind of a cool thing to see, and like even going way back in the day. I mean, we're talking hundreds of years ago, boot culture. If you do boot history and stuff, like who was wearing logger boots? There's a reason they're called logger boots. Loggers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
so they're built for a mission, right?
Yes,
they're built for
exactly.
a purpose.
They're built for a purpose. And so that whole history there is cool. It's just, I would have, maybe someone from the third world, third party would never have thought that a wildland firefighter and a bootmaker would have so much, I want to say, in common.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, like that discussion that we had last time I saw you over in Reading. Dude.
Yeah.
We just bullshitted for like what, 3 or 4 hours.
It was like 3 or 4 hours. Yeah. And it was all just literally boot and fire talk. And I've got a million stories I could tell you about seeing how our boots are worn out on the fire. And I'm sure you do too, how you've seen just...
I am so sorry for every rebuild that I've ever seen. Because I thrash my boots and yeah, dude.
It's endless, and it's cool to see the connection. And I mean, even like when boots come back for repairs and stuff. And so like, I want to say that we get a pretty big influx of repairs in the fall, and then like and then it kind of trickles in over the winter. Just because, guys are kind of winding the season down and whatever.
It's the off season. They have the opportunity.
Yeah. We get a lot of repairs all year round because we have a lot of other different customers. But in general, you see an influx of repairs around that end of the fire season because it's just like all the firefighters are done and they kind of just start sending their stuff in. And when you open up a box that is from a firefighter,
there's a distinct smell.
Extremely distinct smell. And it's not a nasty smell. It's the smell of just fire smoke, wildland fire smoke.
It probably smells like a little bit of sweat, a lot of like ash and smoke. Yeah.
And don't forget chew.
And chew. Yeah. A lot of, that too.
A lot of that,
I wonder, what it's kind of like? It's like, do you have a smoker?
Yeah. Like a Traeger.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you open up that smoker, but it's like super intense.
Yes.
But there's that leather smell in it too, right?
Yep. So like, when we had a smaller space, I just remember like you get like 15 boxes or something. It's all fire boots and they're all opened up and, ready to get, and it's like this shop borderline smells kind of like some fire, like some smoke,
It
just
smells
cool,
like a hot shot buggy.
Yeah. I mean, it's just cool. So it's so awesome to see the connection, how synonymous firefighting and like this boot business has been. And it's something that you wouldn't really think of or know unless you were like in it, but it's just been really, really cool. And one of the most pleasurable things I think is when people say that, dude, like, my feet are my money makers, and if I didn't have these boots, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. Like, that's cool. That feels good. I'm not a firefighter, and I'm not out there risking my life, but it's cool to be a part of the process. There's some fulfillment there, and it feels nice.
I bet you're learning a shit ton about wildland fire culture, even by being connected literally with the earth and the wild and
all the time,
right?
We talked about that on that podcast too. Like, remember we talked how small the community is. Right? I told you all about that, and even I know that, and I'm not even a firefighter. But yes, I've learned a lot about the community and the culture and just the way that they do life. And I think I brought up on the last episode when we did back then on the Eager Point, but literally, I literally had a situation where I think I was on the phone with a guy from New Mexico. And we were talking about something, some kind of boot order, and some kind of color combination. The next day, some guy from Oregon calls me, and he's like, "Hey, so you can do this color combination? My friend just told me about it." I was like, "Okay."
Do they want like a gray upper with like a rough
whatever,
out brown,
something crazy it was, And I was like, "Okay, chance. They're just buddies.
Yeah.
Then I get a call like 2 days after that, Southern Idaho. Then I'm at a show in Ruidoso, New Mexico.
Yeah.
And it was like all 4 or 5 of those guys all knew each other, and they were just like bumping into each other, and they were like talking about, oh yeah, I put in this JK order, and like, you know, it's like, that's just crazy. That doesn't really happen in any other industry. Or like I'll be at a fire academy and I'll see this guy who I saw back in Bastrop, Texas 2 years ago. He's like, oh, I ordered boots from you back then, remember? And I'm in Oregon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's such a small, connected, tight-knit community that spans over 7, 8, or 9 states. It's just so cool. It's just so cool.
I think it's really cool. Yeah, and yes, it is very small, and word travels fast. And as you probably know, I mean, it's like, oh yeah, you heard about. I mean, you just said it, right? This colorway of boots with the different color lasts and the different bottom and all that stuff, right? Or the different upper and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's you know how they say there's like 6 degrees of separation between like you and the rest of the world, right? You know everybody between 6 people. With firefighters, wildland, even structure, wildland firefighters and firefighters, even the medical, sometimes even the military, it's like 2 degrees of separation. But fire is like, it's a small community, but everybody knows everybody. Like,
pretty much.
If it wasn't for like a handful of people that I kept like running into, it's like, here's how small fire is, right? My captain, he actually took a detail for the AFOS position, the Assistant Fire Operations Supervisor for the Carson City District, right? Because I went full circle in my career, right? I started in Carson City, went and gallivanted around the country, did my thing, and then came back to the exact same place that I started in Doyle, California. I was the engineer or the operator. It's like the fire apparatus engineer, right? He was the captain, and we started there roughly the same time, and we both came back to that place. It's like, how the hell did this happen? It's like,
it's so funny.
Yeah, it's just coming full circle, but it was cool. He's like one of my best friends, right? Joe Bronson, shout out to you, dude. And then it's like the things that Chris Byrne, another guy that I had known for Doyle, that dude taught me how to run an engine like fantastically. Like, this dude was dialed. He was kind of an asshole, but he's one of those people that was like the mean dad, right?
Who meant well, cared about you more than others, actually, but just exuberated a certain way.
Yeah. Yes, he was so goddamn hard on me. He was just riding my ass. He was just like so hard on me and like teaching me how to do this. But you know what? I never forgot a word he said, and he taught me how to be an engine operator to that day.
That's awesome.
The things I learned from this guy is awesome, and it's like coming back full circle and hanging out with him. It's like, he's like, yeah, bro, sorry I was so hard on you, but I just wanted to see you succeed because I see something in you. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. That pulls at your heartstrings. But the people that you meet, like Academy, like if it wasn't for Academy and like some of my friends, like I wouldn't have started Anchor Point. I wouldn't have. It's like, how come there's not a podcast for wildfire? It's like, hold my beer, watch this. And it was like one of those things, a conversation over a couple of beers. We call it mop-up talk, you know, like the stuff that you don't see on like Vice TV or the documentaries and stuff like that. It's BTS, the quiet part, right? Yeah. But if it wasn't for all this interconnectedness and like how you're tied in, even extension of you, right? You're connected with the foundation. You're connected with Mystery Ranch. You're connected with Hot Shot Brewery. You're connected with Grassroots.
Yep.
All of that stuff, right? That's how small it is. And it's just oddly funny how everybody knows each other and how we all support each other in different ways.
Because I think you don't know unless you're in it.
Yes.
You just don't.
You just don't.
Yeah. I didn't know until I quote unquote got into it. Right. I mean, you're just unaware. We were talking about it when we were driving over here. Like and I've told this to Burke too, like a million times. As a child, Spokane, I remember, so I grew up, born and raised Spokane, all my life, never lived anywhere else. We did not have fire. We did in the outlanding, surrounding area, right?
It wasn't like, in the wildland urban interface.
No, it was not close to home at all. Smoke in the city? Like, what are you talking about?
What are you talking about, smoke in the city?
What do you mean? If there's some structure fire and you see a big red fire truck, okay, I get it. But outside of that, nothing. I remember probably around age 14, we started getting a couple days of smoke. Like, when it's smoky, the sun is like red, like a red dot. Yeah. I don't know what that's called, but that's just what happens when it gets super smoky, right?
It's a very distinct look.
Yeah, it's a very distinct look. And it was like borderline, like, is this Armageddon right now? Like, what is happening?
Is this the rapture? Is this going to happen? Like, what's going on here?
Go to church and get right with the Lord real quick, So, and it was like, that was new. That was so weird. And the summers were hotter than normal, And, happened one summer. Okay, we're like, whatever, that's a fluke. Second summer in a row, third summer in a row. And we're like, okay, well, I guess this is now just a norm. And then you actually start seeing it on the news. Oh, USFS firefighters attacking local fire.
Yeah.
What the hell is even that? I don't even know. USFS, what even is? Like, as a 15-year-old kid, I don't even know.
Is this like an army branch?
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know. Is this, did they mobilize the National Guard? Like, which actually, I guess that happens too.
It does.
Apparently.
It does.
Yeah, I didn't even know that either.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, and then like you said, green buggies. Is that waste management? Like, I don't even know what that is. You know what I mean? And I'm just exposing the disconnect between the common individual, unless it's like in your area, unless it's in your home. I guarantee you 75% of America does not know what the hell we're talking about.
I guarantee you that. It's like that conversation we were having on the way over here. It's like if I was wearing my greens, my Nomex, right, my PPE, sure. And my crew shirt in the store, and if I was in the grocery store, like getting lunch or whatever, and on my way to work or like a gas station stop or whatever, and Joe Public decides to ask, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" You're like wearing a uniform. It's like, yeah, I'm a wildland firefighter. And the first two things that they automatically resort to is like, oh, so you're a smoke jumper or you're Cal Fire.
Yeah.
No one knows now, right? It kind of piques your interest because smoke jumpers, like everybody knows what a smoke jumper does. It's like the special forces of the wildland firefighter. The
Navy SEAL of the wildland firefighter, right?
Yeah. Barrel-chested sky gods, whatever you want to call them, right? Everybody knows that because it's glorious, right? It's enchanting. There's like a sex appeal to that, right? Yeah. No one knows what a repeller is. No one knows what a hot shot is. And this is the fucked up thing too, is like no one knew what a hot shot was until the
Only the Brave.
Yeah, the Only the Brave and the Granite Mountain tragedy when we lost 19 firefighters, right? That's the only thing that put hot shots on the map. That sucks.
That's sad.
Yet we have this long sordid history of people dying in entrapments and like tragedy fires like South Canyon, like Esperanza, all this stuff, right? Yet no one knows what they do. They ask you if you're Cal Fire. Yeah. Because like I was saying, what is Cal Fire? They're a PR agency.
With the fire department.
They tell the story. Yeah. Yeah. They got a firefighting side hustle, but they're very much so a PR agency.
So it's kind of unfair because as a kid, everybody wanted to be a firefighter, but not wildland. Yeah.
Firefighters don't have beards.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And so firefighting was always synonymous with the red truck and the slide down a pole and all that kind of stuff. So
Dalmatians and shit that you see in kids' cartoons. Yeah,
exactly. I think that I really liked when we were driving here, you said this thing about Cal Fire, how it's like a PR firm, so to speak. I like that. And I think that that's like amazing that they do that and they do it really well. Do you wish that other departments also did that?
I do, because if there was more awareness, grassroots wouldn't have to exist. With the pay.
Do you really believe that?
I 100% do. People don't even know like the complexities of wildfire. People don't know what we do. People don't know the importance of wildfire, and they don't know why these things even start. There's only like really two reasons wildfires start, either human or natural cause, but a lot of people don't know that.
This thing with grassroots and the progress that they've made and then the goals that they have. I mean, do you think that literally lawmakers would change their tone if the public was just more aware of what was going on? Like, would it really be that so connected?
I want to say yes.
Wow.
Awareness is going to be 3/4 of the battle, and the other quarter is probably going to be storytelling, like personal firsthand accounts of like, hey, if X were to change, I wouldn't have to do Y. Or if Y were to change, B would not have to happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we attract it? How we have a long history of traditions and the way we do business, and firefighting is not going to change. I mean, yeah, there'll be some new tech that gets invented. Cool. That's all right. Whatever. I'm part of that crowd. I get it. And it's necessary, right? But at the end of the day, fire is put out by your hands and your brain. And now if we don't have this legacy behind us, passing on the knowledge to the next generation, because there's no next generation, or there's not enough numbers to sustain that next generation of future firefighters, then where the hell are we going to do? We're losing generational knowledge, like hundreds of years of generational firefighting, wildland firefighting knowledge over the recent course of history, because people can't afford to live, man. And it's either between mental health, your quality of life and pay, those are people, that's going to be the major reasons why people are leaving. So when you have that person like I'm one of those people. I have 11 years. I started my perm career and I don't even get to pay into retirement until I'm a perm, right? So I spent 6 years as a temporary seasonal. Then I did a handful of years, 5 years as a permanent, right? I only got 5 years of retirement, yet I've done 11 years. That's half of your 20 and out. You don't have to do 20 years of your service and then you go qualify for an annuity and all your retirement, your fire retirement, all that stuff, right? If you get into this job at like 18, 20 years old, 20 years is not that far.
Yeah.
And then you keep building on it. If you want to increase that longevity out to 30 years, now you got a higher top 3 because you're moving up the chain. You got more money in the bank with your TSP. You got all this stuff. But when you have to spend so many effing years spinning your wheels and not getting the professional level of treatment, because this is a professional job, you can't take just Joe Schmo off the street and throw him out in the wildfire and say, good luck with the Pulaski. You can't do it, right? The leadership and stuff involved in the operational knowledge that takes, there's not really a formal school for it. There is, but it's not like you're going to a fire academy. You do in some sense, but it's all hands-on knowledge. It's very tactile. It's very intuitive. Yeah. It's crazy, man. We're losing that.
Give me some grace with what I'm about to say. Okay. But I have a theory. And my theory is that I want it to change. But I don't know if I believe that it will to the dream that we all have, like grassroots have. And the reason that I say that is because, let me start with this, that just being even in the business world, I've just seen what actually moves money and what actually moves the market. You know, it's like what's actually turning the wheels of market and industry and innovation and sales and revenue and job creation and job loss. And it's really like, is there something to gain? Is there money to be made? Is there something to gain? Is there a prize to win? And unfortunately, I think that because wildland, the threat of wildland fire is not, you could argue that it is, but it's not a direct.
It's a distant problem.
It's a distant problem. That's a good way to say it. Number 2, the government can't make money. Private businesses can't really make money. You can argue there's small nuance, burn bot, JK Boots, but that's tiny compared to what's actually out there.
Yeah, trillions of dollars of budget for the Forest Service.
Exactly, right. So I think for those 2 reasons and others, it's like it's not a hot enough topic, and it doesn't matter enough to the market for there to actually be serious change and movement. And
I'm going to agree with you.
Yeah, that's a hard truth and hard pill to swallow.
It is a hard truth and it's a hard pill to swallow, but what happens if we don't? There's that back to selling what ifs thing, right?
It's too distant of a problem though.
It is. That is not a...
No one cares. So that's rude, but no one cares.
No, nobody in downtown San Francisco or Sacramento or LA gives a flying shit about something that's going on in Central Nevada or Washington.
I'll even take a step further. They don't care about they don't care about you either. They don't care about the 50,000 firefighters because it's insignificant and it doesn't matter and it's not there and it's not the latest thing and it's not tied to $1 billion industry. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares.
But here's the caveat to that, right? You're gonna say you start a business and you grow older and you're successful and you want your little slice of heaven. Every person on this planet, if you have the right circumstances and you say you live the little slice of the American dream that everybody's after, and you want to buy your slice of heaven, or you want to go out and hunt and enjoy the woods,
away from the city,
away from what you call home,
right.
Or if you want to buy a piece of that, it's not a matter of if wildfire will affect you; it's a matter of when. And if you don't think that wildland fire affects you currently, well, just look around. Look at the PM 2.5s in the air that's causing cancers. It's literally shaving years off your life every summer.
That's crazy, actually. Wow, I never thought about that.
No one thinks about the secondary, tertiary, or quaternary effects of wildfire, right? So you look at California, right? Because California is Hollywood Central, right? Every fire pornographer, that's a quote to shout out to my buddy Gabriel. Man, he's got his documentary coming out. It's called Hot Shot. It's great. Anyways, he calls them fire pornographers, and everybody's like just swarming like the most insignificant things, right? Yeah. And just getting a media click out of it because that's how they get paid. I understand that there's an economy right behind that. Unfortunately, it's disaster economy, tragedy economy, but that's how media works. That's what gets hits, and it sucks. But the things that we don't think about is what's the long-term effects of those fires, right? You have a ripping fire go through the Santa Cruz Mountains, right? You're taking away the stability of the soil. Not only are you losing homes and making the insurance skyrocket, the premiums in insurance skyrocket, you're destroying like heirloom family ranches, you're destroying the treasures of the individual, but now you have entire communities that are either
displaced.
One, displaced, they have to come back and rebuild, but two, now they are not reinsurable because they've designated this as a fire-prone area and it's too high of a risk to insure, or the premiums just go through the freaking roof and it's unaffordable to have fire insurance. Secondarily to that, that fire rips through there, disturbs the soil, takes away all of that stuff that's holding the land literally together, right? Now you have rock slides, you have mudslides, you have all this erosion stuff. You have downstream poisoning of fish because of all of this like soot, ash, dirt, and debris going in and clogging up the waterways. Like, why don't we think about that shit?
Look, I believe you, and you're right.
But it's a distant problem.
Yeah,
I'm agreeing
right.
with you.
You're right. Like, I can't tell you how right and factual everything. And I bet you if we went and pulled up a laptop right now and we deep dived every point that you said, we would find more supporting evidence. You're right.
Yes.
Let me play the part of a just money-focused person. I don't care.
I know.
Yeah, I really don't care because I can't make a buck. I might make a buck in 10 years, but I'm not going to make a buck now.
Yeah.
That's like sick and like messed up, and that's not how I operate. That's not how I think. But I'm playing in the mind of the market. Like, you know, that's why it's like sad. And I guess I don't know even what solution to give. I think what Grassroots has done, actually the fact what Grassroots has accomplished is borderline a miracle.
It is a miracle. We've moved mountains in the last 4 years.
Yeah, and so that's like incredible. The fact
with
that
probably
so much
a plastic
territory.
one of that.
Yeah, exactly. So them doing that gives me a lot of hope that they'll be able to go further. But I just don't know when it's gonna hit the spot where it's like, listen, okay, like there was enough grace for this much change to happen, but then it's like, okay, done, because
where does the buck stop, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because now the focus is, you know, AI, the next Kardashian, and
AI is not going to solve your cancerous
whatever. Yeah, see, I wish people thought about that too.
They don't. I'm just as guilty of it, right? I mean, human nature, it's very hard to see past what's right in front of you, right?
Yeah.
Or the immediate future, not the long term. You can't comprehend it. It's too far in the future, right? It hasn't happened yet.
Even I have a hard time with, okay, what's one of the biggest selling points of non-fire? What's one of the biggest selling points of our product? It's the longevity.
Yeah.
You buy a pair of boots, quality, longevity. You buy a pair of boots, and it's not going to go 6 months or borderline a year that you might get from your lower price product. No, it's going to go like 5 to 7.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking,
and then you can rebuild it and not pay the full cost.
Exactly,
of boots,
and it
right?
just keeps going. Exactly, it's going and going. So compounded over all this period of time, it's like it's a no-brainer. Even that sell can be difficult to people at times.
It's a distant problem.
It's a distant problem.
We're selling what ifs.
Exactly. You know, so if I, as you know, we're focusing on marketing all the time. We're thinking about how do we make our product more accessible? How do we remove constraints, break down barriers to entry? You know, all confidence, all this stuff, right? Buyer confidence, consumer confidence, all these things. And we're like, man, like, okay, like we got to do this, got to do this, and it's like, man, but sometimes what if people don't believe us, whatever. That's hard enough. I can't imagine the challenge then that someone like you, or let's say a wildland firefighter, Grassroots, like it's insurmountable almost in a sense, you know. So it's like it's sad, and you and I know, and we get it, and because we're in this, and you were actually a firefighter. I'm partly in this community. I grew up in an area where there was no fire. Now there is. If I had to cast a vote as a representative in the Senate, as a Senate, what I would say, hey, I had this experience. I know. I don't think that our members of Congress or members of the Senate have any experience in this. Maybe some do.
They're learning this stuff from us and their staffers.
Okay, come on. And when it gets through 7 different people and finally gets to the actual individual, what's the message that's being communicated? It's not even close to the truth.
It's not. And that's the unfortunate thing about things like Tim's Act, right? It's like whirlwind of difference. Like if you were to switch, like this room was dark, and that's our current state of operations for wildland fire federally. If you were to like flick the light switch on and it's like, holy shit, I can see. Oh my gosh.
That's what the Tim's Act did.
That is what Tim's Act is.
It's amazing.
It is not passed yet, but I've had a hand in writing some of this legislation, man. I mean, it's hard. And you want to talk about crash course in civics? Yeah, this is one of them. Get involved with it.
Yeah.
dude, it's hard.
Yeah.
But the hard sell is, and if you want to, like, I guess if you want to talk the money game, if you want to talk about the true cost of wildfire, when we see the numbers, like from the campfire, it's like in the billions with a B, right? Billions of dollars of damage. That's just the suppression costs. That's just to put the fucker out. We're not talking about the burned area restoration teams. We're not talking about the replanting, the soil disturbances. We're not talking about the landslides. We're not talking about the insurance premiums. We're not talking about what the actual number is. And now if you want to go back to like the money thing, who's done the calculation? How can you calculate that? What is the true cost of wildfire? Is your health diminishing? Are you going to get lung cancer? Are we going to have this meteoric rise in silicates in the atmosphere from like all the dust and shit? From basically, you could have a fire so large that you can have a dust bowl situation from the fire years later because it's been sterilized. Now, where's all that particulate matter, all that silicates, all those things that are going into our bodies? Where are those going? What's the true cost of wildfire? The fallout effects of wildfire are astronomically large, and we will never know the true costs of it. But what do you want to do? Do you want to pay a little now and pay an ounce of prevention and sell that what if and buy that insurance policy, take care of the people that are risking their lives for a better, more sustainable forestry program, fuels management program, your kids? I got kids. I want to take them to national parks. I don't want to see the fucker burnt down. What is the true cost? What are we buying here? Is it insurance, or are we just talking about the immediate future? And it's hard.
That's a hard question.
It's hard. Yeah. So I get everything you're saying, but
no, I'm more playing devil's advocate with you right now. I get it. I'm all for it. It's just
the how. How do you do it?
Yeah, like I immediately start thinking practically and strategically. Like we have this, we have this goal. We want to let the world know about
money's an excellent motivator.
Yeah.
Money, pain, and love.
Yeah. It's like, now how do we take this dream that we have, which is good and right and honorable and just and righteous, and then like actually make it into fruition, make it real. And then I'm just immediately thinking, okay, like what is even the step and process look? And it's like the first thing that I hit is like, is anybody actually going to buy this? Like, is anybody actually going to buy into? You and I did.
I've lived it, man.
Because you've lived it.
Yeah.
And probably
you got one toe in the black too. You can relate to these folks.
I can relate to these folks. And I think that most people, if they heard this conversation, would also, like people who just regular people living their lives, regular everyday Americans, they would also probably buy into this and understand it. But now the question is, okay, how do you get that from this kind of grassroots, right? Place and actually take it to somewhere where it's like there's this topic and then they're also talking about this topic and there's this going on in freaking Ukraine and the debt ceiling and then there's this and then there's this and it's like
there's this scandal. There's
oh,
Kim Kardashian has a new ass.
Yeah,
whatever.
Exactly. Who cares? Like, and the NBA Finals and the Super Bowl and this. It's like, so that's the hard part, and I think that's what every single grassroots type movement probably encounters.
Oh yeah.
And unfortunately,
you're going to encounter resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question is, I guess, how many of them actually make it or fizzle out? And it's probably just this thing, you just don't quit and you just don't give up. And
we don't.
You just keep going until you get what you need. You get what you want.
And I think that with grassroots, and which I am, full disclosure here, I'm one of the founding members of it. I'm number 6 on the roster there. Yeah. So, and I've been less involved with it just because of kids and life and stuff like that lately, but it's been a hard battle, man. And I think the biggest thing is really opening people's eyes. I think the storytelling too, the personal
I think exposure
experience
is what you guys need the most right now.
Yeah. Well, it's not just, we don't need the exposure. We have a marketing machine behind grassroots. We're doing great to the people that matter. I mean, I can't out anybody, but we have some very excellent relationships with people on Capitol Hill that you would be surprised. Democrats, Republicans, independents.
It's a bipartisan issue.
House, Senate.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It's a bipartisan. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican, your fucking house is going to burn down.
Blue or left isn't going to stop the fire.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And we've had some good headway, but like where do we go if we succeed?
That's a great question.
And I don't think that we're going anywhere, to be honest with you. I think there will always be a need for grassroots wildland firefighters, because what's the next mission? So, okay, we fixed the Fed stuff. What's next? We're problem solvers, man. That's what a wildland firefighter is. It's a professional problem solver. And when you have something that can be the greater good change for thousands of people, there's the generational firefighters out there. Like, that's their family legacy. Between fire and military, you don't really hear much of a generational paramedic.
Yeah, that's true.
Or a generational doctor.
Yeah.
You don't hear that, but between the military and wildfire
and fire,
and fire in general, it doesn't matter if it's specific to structure.
I would say
wildland.
maybe police officers, you hear it.
Yeah.
But that's
the people that kind of keep you safe at night.
Exactly.
Folks.
That's kind of the only one that I can think of in addition to fire and military. It's kind of like, oh yeah, my grandpa was, my dad was, and now I am too.
Yeah.
So
what's next? I mean, that's the big question, because I think that I'm very cautiously optimistic, because we've done so much, like the combined efforts, and it takes an army. I'm not saying it's just grassroots. It's not just me. It's not just you. It's not just the surprising help from people that you would never expect with grassroots. It takes an army. It takes the vocalization and the grassroots movement of tens of thousands of people to actually implement change and tell their story. And I think that's why things like Amanda's podcast is so expensive, or is so important. Like Life with Fire, she has a wonderful podcast. I think the stuff that Grassroots is doing is great. It's the foundation. It's all of the people involved, from not only the boots on the ground, but outward.
Yeah.
Secondary and tertiary folks as well.
Yeah.
Because we all have the power to do this. And we've moved mountains with, like I said, plastic sporks in the past.
Yeah.
More legislation that has been beneficial for wildland firefighters has happened in the last 4 years than they have in the last 50.
Wow. That's significant.
So it is possible.
Yeah.
We have their attention.
That's awesome. Sounds like you're in a season right now of driving it home.
Yes.
Wow.
To all the things that we just talked about, that hard sell, that selling what ifs, that insurance policy, what are we paying for? What's the true cost of wildfire? That's what we're trying to say. But the most profound and moving things that I've ever heard is like people like Michelle Hart, Tim Hart's widow. Yeah. She is an amazing human being. And dude, I went to Family Day ever at the Wildland Firefighter Foundation, do it once a year for all the fallen, right?
Yep.
Their families, right?
Yep.
You were there.
Yep.
The amount of pain in that room combined with the amount of healing at the same time, that'll move you. It was beautiful. I don't know if you got to stick around for a little bit.
I was there. Yeah.
Was that some of the most, I felt like an interloper though.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've lost friends.
I felt out of place.
I felt out of place.
Yeah. So I was there, but I was in the corner of the room, and I purposefully left early because I felt
it's hard to handle.
Yeah. It wasn't right for me. I felt like I shouldn't be there, almost, because it was just very heavy. And I felt like I was infiltrating the room. I was like, I didn't belong there, because
like
it was
exactly.
It was so daunting. It was so deep, and it's like, this is something that you can only be a part of if you've actually experienced this and been here with these people.
You walked a mile in those boots, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that's a great story. I actually didn't even think about that to this moment. Like it was so, being there for that day and then just seeing it's like,
that was the anniversary of Tim Hart.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to stick around for it, but the only reason why I did is because I was there for Michelle. She said, she voluntold me, let's be honest here. She was all like, hey, the person that was supposed to be here to support me, their flight got delayed. I need you to come with me. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do that. I don't belong there. I can't be there for this. I'm just some dickhead with a microphone and a camera talking about wildfire. And she's like, I'm not asking you. I'm fucking telling you.
Yeah.
And her story and the connection that we all have with her and the connection that we have with the families in that room and the rest of the boots on the ground, because this is a dangerous job. It's not a surprise of when, it's a surprise of who some tragedy happens to. It's inevitable to happen. It's going to happen. That's the shit that motivates people. And I think that Michelle's story and Tim's legacy and all of the people that have fallen around wildfire, those are the people.
Yeah.
Those are the people that are going to make this happen.
Yeah.
Their
That's special.
stories. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I think that was a good spot to pause.
We
to
pause
end
it
right there. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like that was very deep, and I don't want to even.
I don't know if we can top that one, but
Yeah, I don't want to top that one either because I know the Tim Hart story. So, yeah,
it means a lot.
Guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Anchor Point Podcast. Where can we find it?
www.anchorpointpodcast.com.
Okay, Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
All of it. Luminary. Any
Everything.
podcast directory, you can find us there. So
that's awesome.
And every social media channel except for TikTok, because I'm too old to figure out TikTok. So
there's grace for you. That's fine. Follow him on Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast. It's good. It's very quality. He has a much better intro than I do. It's actually serious and recorded. Okay, mine was a little.
I have to have like legal disclaimers with mine. It sucks.
Well, I guess I don't have to have something.
It's not even for me. It's for
right.
for the guests.
Right.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on, man. Seriously, really awesome.
Thank you for having me, dude.
We value a ton, and I think the value that you provide to the community is invaluable. So keep doing what you're doing.
As to you, man.
How many episodes do you have out?
I think I have 125.
That's amazing.
It's fun. It's been a ride. It's been 4 years. So.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thanks so much, guys. Bye-bye.